Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Okay, so we just finished up a series of videos on flattening and conditioning silicon carbide stones, okay? And this one right here was the star of that show. It was like a 4 or 5 part video. I mean, it was long, pretty detailed. Hopefully this one was going to be detailed, but not quite that detailed, okay? So this is our unknown silicon carbide coarse fine stone. Picked it up off of eBay with a couple other stones just for this series of tests. It's acting an awful lot like Norton crystalline, but there's no markings on it to be able to tell yes or no that it is or isn't. Didn't come with a box either. So that series of videos was on the coarse side. Okay, we took the coarse side from looking all nasty like this fine side to something that's almost completely flat and reconditioned on the coarse side. One thing I guess I could mention on this is if you can take a look, you see there's a section here in the middle that is still glazed over and plugged up and everything. Okay, you know, there's two schools of thought on that. You know, one, you could say, okay, well, that needs taken care of. So let's go ahead and put it on the plate glass with a coarse powder, and let's go ahead and get it completely flat, completely dressed, dress our corners off, or, you know, these corners. I guess you could dress off these corners. You know, get it conditioned all the way completely and then start to work. Okay? Or you could say, well, you know, all right, that's in the very center of it, so the edges are all still working. And if we go ahead and flatten it completely, then we lose the use of those edges. So, you know, just go ahead and condition it as we, you know, use it, and eventually we'll get down to the bottom. You know, either way I think is right. So that's kind of up to you, whichever way you want to do it. It's kind of like when you get a chip in the edge of your knife. Do you want to sharpen the whole edge to get rid of that chip? Or do you just, you know, kind of work that chip out as you sharpen it and use it so that you get the use of the rest of that steel throughout the life of the knife? Either way is good. Okay, so what we're going to do this time is we are going to pull out the handy dandy microscope again. We're going to take a look at a freshly conditioned 220 grit stone. This one right here, so see how plugged up and nasty it is. We're going to go ahead and use some mineral oil, and we are going to sharpen up these two knives, and we're going to do rope cutting tests with both of them with a as found stone. Okay, note our weights and the number of cuts that we get, which I'll explain that when we get there. We'll probably do that twice each on these two knives. We might do once each on camera, then I'll do another run off camera, and then we're going to dress the stone, and then we're going to do 2 runs on each knife again, and then compare our results. What I'm betting is going to happen, like I said, I think that a freshly conditioned stone cuts cleaner than a poorly conditioned or a glazed over stone, right? It'd be kind of like you know, what is the surface? Now the surface finish won't quite do for like hand sanding knives and stuff like that. It'd be kind of like making a chamber reamer for you know, a bolt action rifle. Okay, so you know how you take a barrel blank, okay, and then you have a chamber reamer, and that reamer is you know, slightly undersized of whatever cartridge that you're going to put in that barrel. Okay, so let's say you've got you've got your favorite hunting rifle, and it's a 30-06, and you want to rebarrel the thing, so you get a new barrel, and you get yourself a 30-06 chamber reamer. Okay, now the factory that made that chamber reamer, you know, they might have made 400 of those things on that run, and then they retooled up to do 308 chamber reamers, right? Okay, well, the tool that they're using to cut the flutes on that chamber reamer, okay, when they start the run, is very nice and sharp. And you know, they might cut 10 reamers and then resharpen the reamer cutter, right? Okay, well, a lot of times you'll get a chamber reamer that's just not quite as, it doesn't leave as nice of a finish as others. well, it would kind of stand to reason that that chamber reamer might have been cut towards the end of the chamber reamer cutter's lifespan. Okay, so the first chamber reamer that was cut on that sharpening came out perfect. And then it goes down a little bit, you know, I mean, they're all within spec, but the last one just doesn't cut quite as well as the first one. Okay, is that clear as mud? Alright, so I'm kind of betting this is going to happen the same thing on knives. So I'm betting that a glazed over stone is going to make an edge that is serviceable, and it'll pop hair and cut rope and all that kind of stuff, but it won't be as crisp and as clean as a stone that's been freshly conditioned, and then you cut your edge on your pocket knife with that. Okay, so that's probably a little bit of rambling, but that's alright. You guys should be used to it by now. Okay, so let's turn our scope on, or our camera on. And let's get you kind of close here. You know, I don't understand how come the TV makes this all look kind of bluish. You know, when I look through the eyepiece, you know, it's gray. Kind of strange. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, we are zoomed in as much as we can get. Okay, now this here, this stone is kind of, we're not looking directly down at it. We're looking at it like this. Okay, so this is my my vintage, I guess you could call it, jumbo. And this is the fine side. Yeah, right about. Okay, so remember, as we focus this, as we're looking at a stone, you know, on angle, you know, we'll get a band that is clear, and then a band that is fuzzy, and a band that's fuzzy, you know. But looking, and also remember, you know, when I, you know, did the looking at a knife, you know, on this side, you look at it edge down. If it is sharp, you won't see any light glinting on the edge. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is, you know, the spaces in between the crystals look nice and clean, right? I mean, there's some shop dust, and you know, I might have sharpened 10 knives on this stone. I'm not really sure, but so it's not completely freshly cut, but it is, you know, in good shape right now. These crystals right here look good and sharp. The spaces look free, you know, there's room for swarf and oil and you know, broken down particles and steel particles to fall in between those spaces and not impede future sharpenings. Okay, so this stone looks in good shape. So now next is going to be our you know, eBay stone. Okay, now first let's zoom way out. First we got to find it, I guess. Okay, so that's way out, and we're just on the limit. There we go. We'll have to zoom in a little bit. So this won't be all the way out, but it'll be close. Okay, so just right off the bat, I have to come in a little bit. You can see it's glazed over. Okay, I mean, all these points right here of light that you're seeing are all dull particles, and then in between those points of light is a mat of shop dust, steel particles, broken down sick particles. I got a plane coming over the house. I'm not sure if you guys are going to hear that or not. Now it's gone. Okay, so we got dull particles that we can see, and then we got a mat of trash in between the dull particles. Okay, now let's go ahead and zoom in and get a closer look at it. Okay, now you can really see it. There we go. Now this is looking straight down on it. All right. We still got, I mean, you can hardly see individual particles. Now remember, this is the fine side of this stone, which is going to be 330 300, 320 gradish, something like that. So these particles are going to be much smaller than the coarse side. All right. So now but you can see, you know, the mat of trash in between the particles. So now let's get it onto an angle there. Oh. There we go. Now we can kind of sort of see some individual particles in here, but most of it is still, you know, just a mat of trash. All right? Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do now, we're going to take that stone. Let's see, I'm going to stand this away when I want y'all to be that away. Okay, so the two knives, we got just, you know, my standard mineral oil. So we'll put some mineral oil on there and get it kind of soaking. And then we'll introduce these two knives, and then we will sharpen them up. See? Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so the first one right here is one of my Carter pattern neckers. I got the pattern out of Murray Carter's 101 Knife Designs book. Great pattern. This is one of the first ones that I ever made. It's out of my 1095 hickory handle, a 3-pin, which I only make them with 2 pins now. Plus I make them a little bit pointer and a little bit narrower with a little bit larger finger groove. But anyways, so 1095, going to be 61, 62 rock wool hardness, something like that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start on this side. There we go, that's a good spot on the bench. Okay, and raise a burr. And we have one. Now this side right here, as I'm sharpening, you know, I can see that we're starting to, you know, loosen up that mat of junk that's in between the particles on top. Okay, now I've got a burr on that side. You know what we probably ought to do? We probably ought to stop right now and show the burr. Okay, because on one of my other videos, this dude, he says there's no way that you brought up a burr that fast. And boy, he said that like, you know, hey, there is no way you can do it like that. Well, there you go. See, there's the burr. Here's part of it about ready to start coming off. Okay, so this, remember, this is a three-dimensional object that we're looking in 2 dimensions. So our edge is going to be right here. Okay, this is the burr, and you can see how it's starting to flake off. All right. So yes, I did create a burr that fast. I'm not going to mention any names, but you know. But, you know, as that fella sharpens more and practices, you know, and starts, you know, the more time you got on the stones, usually the better you are. You know, I mean, I've been doing this since I was about 5, and it seems like I learn probably just as much as you guys do every time I do these videos. Okay, so we got our burr established on one side, then we moved it to the other side, right? So now we're going to lighten up our pressure and go to single strokes. We move the burr over, move the burr over. Now we really lighten our pressure up. Fewer alternating strokes to weaken up that burr and prepare it for removal. All at roughly the same angle, right? Now I can feel that burr, and it's 1/3 to 1/4 of the size of what you saw on the camera there. Okay. Now this is a trick that I found that works really good on these soft silicon carbide stones. When you go to shear the burr off, you know, we just stirred up a whole bunch of trash on the top of this stone, right? Plus we left some new steel particles and such. So we want to add more oil and float all that crap out of there so that when we do our micro bevels, we don't have bits and pieces of trash that are impacting our newly formed edge. Okay? So we flooded it pretty good. Now we're going to go very lightly, you know, twice the angle that we were sharpening with. So if that right there is flat, that right there is the angle I was sharpening at. We'll shear the burr off at something like that. Okay? Okay, and that moved the burr to the other side. That moved the burr to the other side. Now, that burr's getting finer and finer and finer. There, it's gone. I can't feel any traces of it. And it should be completely out of there. So let's check it under the scope right quick. Just because that one same fellow is probably going to be like, well, I didn't see the burr not be there. You know, you try to work and show the best you can, and there's always somebody that's like, well, that wasn't good enough. Okay. Yep, that's all the way down there. See, there is no burr. We got pretty good, you know, a pretty good scratch pattern ending in our teeth, right? But this is the part right here that I'm hoping to show with this. This scratch pattern, to me, now it does look finer than the coarse side, right? Which you would expect that, okay? But just in looking at it, just in looking at this scratch pattern, the scratches to me look kind of, the edges don't look clean and sharp, okay? So, just imagine a tomato, okay? You have a nice fresh edge on your chef's knife, right? And you cut that tomato, and the edges of the, you know, so the tomato is how do I put that? Ah, here, the edge of my bowling ball, okay? So it's round. So imagine this is a tomato, right? When you make that cut with something sharp, okay, the edges right here of that tomato are going to be really crisp looking, right? You take a knife that's dull and you go to cut that tomato, and the edges of that tomato will be rolled in before the cut actually gets torn, okay? So this kind of fresh edge right here is what I'm not really seeing right at the very edge in the scratch pattern, okay? I mean, it looks sharp and everything, but it doesn't look as crisp as it could be. All right. Oh, so we should probably do the obligatory standard, you know, arm shaving test, right? All right. Now you can see some hair getting popped off there, I think. Okay. But that, I mean, you know, heck, you can. Doesn't really take much to shave. Okay, so here is the rope cutting test, right? Now this is manila rope, okay? Manila rope never lies, okay? Especially with a bathroom scale, okay? You can shave, you can cut paper, you know, you can do all that kind of stuff. But if you really want to start seeing what kind of a knife maker or what kind of a sharpener you are, get yourself some manila rope. This is 3/4 inch manila rope. I get it at Home Depot. I get it by the roll. All right, so that roll right there, I want to say these are, it says up in there, 150-foot roll of 3/4 inch manila rope, 529 pound. I don't know if that's working strength or breaking strength, one of the two. Okay, this is my second roll of this stuff, right? You usually break it down into strands, you know, so it's a 3-stranded rope. I break it down into strands just to make it a little bit easier to cut with, right? Get yourself a softwood block that's not really going to hurt your edge, and put it on a bathroom scale, right? Now, the way I do this test, and everybody does it a little bit different, is I try to keep the weight of my hand consistent. This hand is basically just to hold the rope in place, right? So the weight of the block, the weight of the rope, and the weight of my hand right now, and the scale's not, it's not completely centered up, it's 2 pounds under 0 right now. So the weight of everything here, we're looking at 1 1 to maybe 2 pounds on the scale. Okay, so now holding all that steady and trying to keep the weight consistent of my hand, the block, and the rope, now I take a portion of the edge, and I usually go from like here to like here, so an inch, inch and a half or so. Okay, I put that on the rope and I do a draw cut, and that was about 8 pounds. Okay, so the highest that scale went up while I was cutting, no, maybe about 10. Okay, is about 10 pounds. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut until we double that weight, until it takes 20 pounds to complete a cut. Okay, that pretty much tells you that that edge is done. I mean, it'll still cut. I mean, you can cut and cut and cut all day long. Okay, but once you double your weight or you gain 10 pounds in the cut, then you know that your edge is pretty much done. Okay, so that's still 10, so that's the third cut. So now we'll do 5, 6, we'll do 20 or 30. That's 30. Now we'll go 50. Okay, there's 50 cuts. All right. So now we'll inspect our edge, feel for any rolls or anything. There's no rolls or nothing. Okay, so now let's see what's the weight on the 51st cut. All right, so hand and everything weighs about a pound, pound and a half. Now we're at 12 pounds. Okay, so we gained 2 pounds over 50 cuts. Let's see, how much time do we have? We're at 22 minutes. Let's do 50 more cuts, test our weight, and then we'll move on to the other knife. Okay, there's another 50-ish, right? Check the same thing. Okay, our edge is starting to kind of bend over a little bit on this side. Might have been because I'm trying to rush through it. Maybe not, who knows. Okay, so we're about 0 to 1 pounds on the scale. Okay, that's 14 pounds. All right, so we've gained 4 pounds over 100 cuts. All right. And, you know, that's not a bad test. You know, it's okay. But you can kind of tell by the sound of the rope that that initial crispness is gone. All right? Now, will it still shave? Let's see. See if I got any more hair. Okay, that portion of the edge is kind of scrape shaving some hair. I mean, it's taken some hairs and everything, but it's not crisp anymore. Okay, so we'll look at the edge underneath the scope, just to be complete and everything. Okay, now you can see how parts of it are worn down a little bit. Okay, and as the scratch pattern comes off the very edge, it's looking not near as crisp as what it was. I mean, it's looking like a worn edge. All right, so we're going to write down that we did 100 cuts. Let's go necker, 100 cuts, gained 4 pounds. Okay, and then we'll do that again, and then the next one is going to be, how much time do we have? We're at 24 minutes. Let's rush through this one right quick, or at least we'll get as far as we can. So the next knife is going to be my old Victorinox Tinker Swiss Army knife, right? Now this knife, I don't know if you guys are used to it, but this knife used to be, you know, out to there or so. I mean, it's been worn quite a bit. Okay, we got a burr. It's a light one, but it's there. Okay, we got a burr on that side. Okay, now we'll weaken it really nice. Okay, now we will flood the stone. Get rid of the trash, or as much of the trash on top as we can. Okay, now we'll shear the burr off. Now this, remember, is, I mean, Victorinox makes some really good stuff, but their steel is, you know, it's stainless and it's pretty soft, so a lot of times it can feel kind of gummy, gummy underneath the stone. And a lot of times the burr doesn't want to pop off as clean. Okay, but you can still see it's taken off here really easy. So let's come back over here. We'll check the edge out underneath the scope, except for my camera timed out. Okay, there's the 1095 edge. Now this is from slightly a different angle. The first one, the edge was coming this way. This one, the edge is going that way. But you can kind of still see, you know, like the edges of the scratch pattern in here. They're looking a little bit better, you know, but that could be due to steel type. That could be due to the stone is getting actually cleaned, you know, as we're sharpening with it. Whatever, right? But it's an okay edge and it's popping here. So let's come back here to our rope cutting test station. Alright, so rope, block, hand and everything's about 1 pound. Taking about 10 pounds or so to make a cut. So let's make 50 of them. There's 39 and the edge is starting to give it up already. We'll go ahead and make 50. So 40. Okay, so there's 50 cuts. The edge doesn't seem like it's rolled hardly at all. So we're at 14, 15, about 18. 18 to 20. Okay, so there we've gained, you know, our 10 pounds and 50 cuts, which is to be expected. I mean, these are softer stainless steel, you know, which they would need to be for a pocket knife like this. You know, since they're the same hardness all the way throughout. If they ran this much harder, then they'd start having to worry about blades snapping off. You know, but I still love the knife and everything. Now the number of cuts and the number of pounds isn't quite so important in these tests as the differences. Okay, so making 100 cuts and gaining 4 pounds, you know, that doesn't really mean anything until we test the stone at the end of the test and see if we go 100 cuts and we gain 3 pounds, or if we go 150 cuts to gain the 4 pounds. Okay, so you know, this is just a way to compare this edge versus that edge. Okay, so the numbers outside of that comparison don't really mean a whole lot, except for, you know, the knife made 100 cuts in hard old manila rope before it gained 4 pounds, right? Let's see, let's go tinker, 50 cuts, let's go 8 to 10 pounds. One more thing, and then oh, let's look at the edge after we're done with it. So maybe 2 more things. We'll look at the edge right quick. Now, see how, maybe don't see how. See how our edge, you don't see the glints anymore, okay? And the whole thing looks just worn down, okay? Which is, you know, I mean, that's what happens when you make 50 cuts in manila rope. The thing I was going to tell you about the rope, okay, so, you know, you probably, I mean, if you're watching this, you probably read, you know, the knife magazines, right? And one in particular, Blade Magazine, okay? Blade Magazine's, you know, it's a pretty good knife magazine, right? Well, there's a fellow in there that does a whole lot of, like, cutting tests, and he'll do tests like this, you know, the knife made, you know, 200 cuts, right? But if you read on there, a lot of time he's using sisal rope. Okay, sisal rope looks a lot like manila rope, but they're not the same thing. Sisal rope is kind of like, well, I don't want to. Sisal rope is a very, very weak rope, okay, compared to manila rope. All right. Well, that's about the easiest way I can put it. So imagine sisal rope being, well, first of all, it's much lighter, and the breaking strength is much less. But it's much, much less abrasive on a knife edge. Okay? So if you get 100 cuts in a piece of manila rope, that same knife, I would, you know, it's been a long time since I cut sisal, but I would guess if you had a knife that went 100 cuts in manila, that same knife would probably go 500 cuts in sisal. Probably more, but we'll say 500 just to be on the safe side, right? Okay, so this manila rope, it is some tough, nasty stuff, okay? It's the best test medium I've ever come across, all right? And pretty much if you've got a knife a knife and an edge combination that does really good in manila rope, then typically it'll do really good in basically real world cutting stuff, okay? So like, you know, I use my knives really hard for work, okay? So work being, you know, outdoor stuff, meat preparation. So like outdoor stuff would be, you know, anytime you're out in the hills, you know, fishing, opening up trout, you know, cutting fishing line, cutting rope, then hunting season, you know, so dressing out rabbits, deer, elk, dressing them out, skinning them, you know, so you're working with, you know, meat and hide and leather, rope, wood, you know, that sort of stuff. And for that sort of stuff, a manila rope test will really let you know what a knife edge will do in that sort of medium. Okay? Alright, so we're at 34 minutes already. I'm going to go ahead and shut you off. I'm going to resharpen both these knives, do another rope test off camera, and then I will bring you back. We will go over those results. We'll recondition this stone, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing all over again and see what we get. Again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video. I don't know if you're looking forward to the next couple, but I am. This is some pretty exciting stuff. We will see you next time.